we can't just stay in our bubble that we have been successfully in for the past 15 years. How do we create sub in all of this? What do we do to grow ourselves and make ourselves more valuable?
Hi, I'm Andre Chandra, founder and CEO of Propelo Media. Leaders rise up in challenging times. In today's Ask an Expert series, we're going to be talking to Heather Frank, president of Studio 440. It is a firm that specializes in helping nonprofits fundraise through theme events such as Wine, Women, and Shoes and Farm to Tableau. Let's hear what she has to say. So Heather Frank, thank you for joining us. You are the president of Studio 440. And can you tell me a little bit more about what you do and what your company does?
Yeah, nice to meet you as well. Thanks. We are a company that works with nonprofits with fund development, strategic planning, and we also have two signature events, Wine, Women, and Shoes and Farm to Tableau. So we're definitely in this event industry, fund development, strategic planning for nonprofits.
All right. And now everyone is going through this outbreak. You and I are both in California. So maybe you can share with us how COVID-19 has impacted the nonprofit sector.
Well, I think for us, we've kind of been hit two sides. One, overnight, we watched the nation really come to a standstill. And I think one of the first industries that we saw hit the hardest was some version of the event industry, and kind of how it sprawled outwards very quickly, from event planners to AV tech to venues. And our company is at the forefront of that. We, throw charity events for nonprofits. And as these venues began kind of putting restrictions on, and we saw state and governors put capacity, started to size down on capacity for large gatherings, our business really halted. We had to quickly kind of come up with plan B when we could only bring, first it went from 500 and very quickly we saw it, kind of dwindle down to 300, and then immediately saw states start to put the 100-person capacity into place, and then no gatherings over 8 to 10 people. So we were hit quickly in that, and really forced to lean forward in our strategy as a company to decide what next looks like for us.
I see. And maybe you can share with us, some of those decisions when this outbreak happened and when the government started ruling that way.
Yeah, so quickly we just started to evaluate. I think for our company, we were a little bit ahead. We saw this happening a little bit sooner. Our team started to get a little bit more anxious, our partners. So immediately, I remember I was on a plane to Chicago and it all went down, and I was on Wi-Fi, texting my team very quickly on what our plan was going to be. We immediately got on the phone with all of our nonprofit partners who had events scheduled between March and May, we became counselors, we became, advocates. We started putting recommendations and procedures in place that would support them. And we really started to look at our company in a way that was like, how do we protect our small business at the same time, representing this very fragile population does so much good for our society, so in our communities. So we had to find the balance in that very quickly, and started looking virtual. We throw signature events for nonprofits. How do we take them virtual? What services and resources can we pool from to make that happen? What else do they need? We can't just stay in our bubble that we have been successfully in for the past 15 years. How do we create sub in all of this? What do we do to grow ourselves and make ourselves more valuable? And we quickly we've been doing a version of consulting for a while. We immediately created a virtual event and just continue to pivot and be what our nonprofits need and our partners need us to be right now.
I see. Yeah, I love to hear how you, I think you said it best. You become an advocate because you're thinking long term, and there's light at the end of this tunnel. Maybe you can share with us what the nonprofits are seeing right now. If you have your ear to the ground in this particular industry, so what have they been experiencing?
A call to action. I think for the first time in decades, we're seeing nonprofits who have been supported by generous donors and have communities that have wrapped their arms around them for years. And for the first time, we're seeing the donors look back at the nonprofits and say, we have supported you. Now you need to support our community. And so we're seeing we're seeing nonprofits who kind of got frozen in place a little bit, and how we're able to nudge them and say, don't stop. It's now our time more than ever to ask for help. It's our time to help. We're being called to that right now. Our team is really kind of lining out what it looks like in crisis mode. And I hate to use crisis but that's really where we're at. It's either they're in crisis because they are out of the services. Their services are being pushed to the brink, or they're in crisis mode because they've all of a sudden lost funding for all the services all the funding that was coming in is gone, whether they were event heavy or they were federally and state funded, and those resources are being reallocated. So it really is just a melting pot of different scenarios. And it also is state driven. I mean, I wish I could say this was cookie cutter, but it's not. One of my team is tracking each state laws on a daily basis, so we can stay ahead of what each state is saying. California, not announced, not till the end of May. Idaho, going back to action May 1st. Tennessee, opening the doors next week. Texas, it just varies based on the state. So our business, like many that are small businesses, but nationally out there, require adaptability and really forward thinking, trying to stay ahead of what we think is going to happen on a state by state basis.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. So that is true. The kind of state by state opening dates, so to speak, right? Can impact these different nonprofits located in different states.
Yeah.
And do you see some kind of nuances or differences between nonprofits that deal with humanitarian issues? So, for example, like taking care of kids or taking care of seniors, versus nonprofits that support the arts or maybe animal rescue and things like that?
I mean, the quick answer I think that most would say is yes, but if we look at the research right now we're seeing in the past 4 weeks, and there's a lot out there. We have some great researchers and blogs really following the trends right now. And as we stay on top of those, domestic violence rose 420% over the last 6 weeks. So, we're seeing more dogs being put out on the streets because the families can no longer afford to feed them. So yes, the quick answer, food banks for sure. We're seeing them rise up. We're seeing hospital foundations be called to action. We're seeing the most immediate services, nonprofit services being handled. However, the funding can't stop and hasn't stopped for these more peripheral nonprofits. Arts are still at the forefront. Our kids are home now more than ever. We're actually seeing a lot more organizations become digital education platforms, which is, again, pivoting their role as a museum into providing these back to basic services that we grew up with kids. But art and music is not an everyday elective in most of our education system across the country. So I'm really proud to see how each organization, especially our partners, are looking outside of what we would have considered our box 6 weeks ago. And I think moving forward, we're going to continue to see virtual be a presence. Maybe not to the degree. I think once we get out of this, it's going to we're going to have what I heard someone reference as Zoom fatigue. But I do think now there is a standard being put in place that after every crisis, we gain something new or we learn something new. And I think the new version of virtual in our classrooms, in our nonprofits, and our companies was going to stick around with us for a while.
Right, that's great to hear. Now, you mentioned the word. I think some things are here to stay. Being more virtual is definitely one of them. What other kind of new normal will we experience from this point onward? That maybe you can share, you start seeing or hearing, particularly in your particular industry. Maybe some other sectors can learn from that too.
Yeah, I think for us, events in general are really being evaluated, and will be a number one topic of conversation as states start to find their new normal. I think we will start to see a combination of virtual events and then, in-person events based on size and scale. I do hope that we can find a way to still remain connected, even with technology at the forefront. As I am watching and really encouraging and finding out, what we're going to continue to coach or recommend, I still want there to be a blend, because in-person connection is something we all really need in our life. It's easy to hide behind a screen, but before this crisis, we understood that technology was kind of changing us as people. And,
Right.
As we support our nonprofits and as a company look forward, I want to always be ahead of that. So I do think that virtual events is going to stay in some form or another. I do think we'll start to see a little bit of a blend within organizations of having both. But at some point, I do hope that we get back to a place, whether we, focus on quality over quantity. That's a big one for us. Is we don't need to worry about if we can hold 500, but what can we do with 200 in a room? So I think
Right.
that's, as we continue to pivot, that's where we're kind of really digging in and researching right now how to accomplish that.
Right. Right. We're all social creatures, so nothing replaces human to human interaction. You and I are, kind of seeing each other here on the screen, but nothing replaces like being in the same room.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank
I
you.
miss
Yeah.
the handshakes and the hugs. I told someone that the other day.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Is there anything else that I haven't asked or forgot to ask that you'd like to share?
No, I think that as we the event industry as a whole, I hope the government continues to look in and really evaluate how important it is to our country and how many people are really pivoting to make things better for all areas, not just events, but graduations and all the things that really have become moments in all of our lives. So
Right. Okay. Well, thank you, Heather. I really appreciate again for your time.
thanks
And
for
you
having
stay
me.
safe.
You
Yeah.
too.
All right. And let
Thanks so
me
much.